Good morning. It's Thursday, January the 7th, and this is The Drill. Thank you. The prayer of the day from the book titled Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare. Quote, I will cause you to break through any demonic opposition. Through your prayers to me, my power can flow. Never forget that my word and my Holy Spirit are your source of power. Stand strong in me and in the power of my might. I am a mighty man of war, and I will fight your battles for you. You can depend on my power and direction. I will be the strength of your life. Meditate upon my word. Speak forth my word with your mouth. I am the source for all your victories and breakthroughs. My word contains wisdom and strategies for your warfare. As you study my word, I will lead you forward to liberty and victory over every demonic force that comes against you. As you call upon me, I will answer you and will show you great and mighty things that you do not know. Psalms 144:1, Ephesians 6:10, and Jeremiah 33:10. I praise my Lord, who is my rock. He trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield in whom I take refuge. Amen. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. Today, the so-called riots in Washington, D.C. Vote your own interests, not party interests. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And culture shapes politics, and you shape culture. All that when I come back. Okay, thank you very much. Yesterday in Washington, D.C., after a rally featuring President Trump, unknown individuals trespassed on the Capitol building. Police overreacted, and one person was shot dead. Hugh Hewitt had something bland to say about it, but I responded to his tweet telling people to disregard Mr. Hewitt's opinion because Hugh is neutral. I further stated that when your left-wing family and friends ask you if you support the quote, violent protesters, unquote, that you should say the same thing that the left always says. No, but I understand why they did it. Or, no, but I understand their righteous outrage. Because what they're trying to do, your left-wing family and friends, is put you on the spot. They want you to distance yourself from your own people. And you don't have to do that. And that's the way out of it. And that's what the left always does. If somebody confronts a left-wing activist about violence, almost always they say, well, I don't support violence, but I understand why they did it. And what they're really saying is, I don't support violence, but I really do. So, or I support violence if it's done by us. Anyone else? No. That kind of thing. Right-wing talk show hosts are constantly asking their listeners to vote the interests of the Republican Party rather than voting their own interests. An example of that is the Senate election that was going on in Georgia, now over. And it's a bad idea. When you and I send someone to Washington, D.C., we expect them to be representing first and foremost us, not the party. And I say that as a matter of common sense. I don't need to do any research to figure it out. That's just simple common sense. Instead what we get is a disconnect. We find that people who are supposed to be keeping their campaign promises aren't. Because they're too busy doing the bidding of the Republican Party. And the priorities of the Republican Party are not the same as the priorities of you and me. The border wall is an excellent example of this dichotomy. The border wall's good for constituents, for reasons that have been given over and over. The wall is not good, however, for the Republican Party. What is good for the Republican Party is amnesty. Amnesty, however, is bad for constituents. So the party and constituents end up working at cross purposes, with the constituencies or constituents lobbying for one thing and the party lobbying for another. Okay, and amnesty is good for the Republican Party because the border then goes away as an issue. The Republican Party has polled and surveyed and found that the border is a bad issue for the Republicans. And remember that the only reason for a party to exist is to raise money to get votes. And that's it. That's all they do. The party wields power in Washington through the committee system. Once a new office holder has been given a committee assignment, the party owns them. They are effectively under the control of the ranking party member. The new member is now poised to put party issues ahead of their campaign promises. And the party really has only two issues that it cares about: money and votes. So everything in the party is going to be about what do we do that's going to enhance our image, gain us money supporters, campaign contributions, and gain us votes. And why do they want money and votes? So they can go out and campaign and get more money and votes. Money and votes. That's all it is. The party really cares about nothing else, and I don't think it should. Okay. So, but how do you solve this problem? How do we deal with this when the elections? We got elections coming up again in another year. It's going to start up in earnest, and then November, a year and a half-ish away from now, we're going to actually have the elections in that November. Now, when people start campaigning, in your district, your state, for Senate or for House or whatever, you need to make sure that you communicate to them that you expect that if they've been on a committee system, if they're an incumbent, that they're going to get off. Tell them, I don't want you on a committee. I don't want you on a subcommittee. Get off. Okay, I want you to be representing me and not the Republican Party. Communicate that clearly. If we can get enough people, enough Republicans, enough conservatives to discourage the use of, or enough to discourage people from being on committees or accepting committee assignments, then we can get back to a point where our representatives are doing their true work, their honest, true work, and they represent us and what it is that we want and we need first and foremost. So that's the solution for it. Rick-Edelman is a talk show host. He's a radio talk show host that I hear on, I believe it's Sundays. And he's a financial advisor, and he has a financial advising company. So he takes phone calls naturally. And a caller named Bob called him up to complain about his student loan because there's an issue now about whether or not student loans are going to be forgiven and to what degree. So the caller Bob was basically what he wanted to say is that he supports it, but he didn't want to come out and say, yes, I support the forgiveness of student loans. He wanted to do it this sort of both ways, or pretend that he's neutral. So he says, on the one hand, I understand why people are upset about this, because there's a lot of people that don't want it because, hey, I've already paid my student loan. Is the government now going to give me a reimbursement? No. Why not? Kind of thing. That's the wrong analysis, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So then he says, this caller Bob says, well, I understand that they don't want, that they're upset about that, but I'm a single parent. I recently became a single parent, and it's tough for me to make ends meet. So what was Rick Edelman's response? It was wrong. It was completely wrong. He said, on the one hand, and then on the other hand. So it was, again, an effort to understand. Why? To be fair. Why? Because the left has told him to. The left is the one that's been on and on for decades about fairness and being fair. And somehow it comes down to being fair means being neutral. But the problem is that if you're neutral, then where do you stand in terms of right and wrong? You don't. You're automatically forfeiting the moral high ground. And you don't want to do that as a conservative. As a true conservative, you never forfeit the moral high ground. So, let me see here. The essence of the caller's point was that he wants to have his cake and eat it too, right? So, that's no good. What he has to do, and what I would have told him if I was Rick Edelman, is I would have sat down and I would have said immediately, you need to man up. You need to man up. You ask the taxpayers to pay for your education. Okay, they did that. We did our part. Us, the taxpayers, did our part. Okay, and this is, again, another issue of neutrality. There's no neutral here. Somebody's going to be affected. Somebody, if loans are forgiven, somebody has to pay that money. It's not just going to go away. It's not just going to disappear. And it's going to be the taxpayers, you and me, that are going to pay for it. And we already paid for it once. Okay? And so now we're being asked to pay for it a second time. So, no, man up. Man up. Pay your bills. If you're having a tough time making ends meet, here's an idea. Why don't you do some cutbacks? Okay, if you cut back as far as you possibly can, then here's another idea. Take your child, put them into foster care until such time as you can get financially back on your feet. You went into this with your eyes open. You knew what you were getting into. You knew you were going to have to pay this back. If you didn't anticipate having a child and all that stuff, that's your problem, not the taxpayers. Man up. Pay your debts. So, and Rick Edelman then, he failed to deal with the caller honestly. He placated Bob instead and tried to be neutral. The problem is, it's false. There is no neutrality because, again, at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the debt. So the only question for Rick Edelman should be, should the Bob pay his debt, repay his debt, or should the taxpayers do it? And he ducked that issue. No good. So when I come back, don't believe the right-wing pundits. Thank you. Don't believe the right-wing pundits when they tell you that politics shapes culture. And they do it all the time. It does no such thing. If politics shaped culture, then there would be no public employee unions. A reason that conservatives fail to get motivated is a lack of righteous outrage and righteous indignation. The left has brainwashed us into believing that outrage is hatred, and furthermore, the left has brainwashed us into being psychoanalysts. They brainwashed us into trying to understand everybody. The only thing we need to understand is morals, not psychology. When we understand the difference between right and wrong, we're all set. I don't care from a right and wrong standpoint why you did something. You come over and step on my foot. I don't care why you did it. You need to stop doing it. Get off my foot and quit doing it. And you're wrong. You need to know that you're wrong for stepping on my foot. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. On the next episode, vote for, not against. The biggest threat to our republic, sliding scale healthcare, and punish your enemies, not yourself. And that concludes another episode of The Drill. Be honest, be smart, and be beautiful. I'm Ron, and that's The Drill.